السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. مرحبا بالجميع. اليوم غادي نقراو واحد شوية ديال الانجليزية. عندنا واحد الكتاب رايموند تشاندلر The Long Goodbye The Penguin Rider. كنبدا الكاتب Long Goodbye. هنا واحد الجملة كيخداوها من القصة كيحطوها في الأول عاد باش كيبنيو عليها. That night Terry Woodhart told me that the story of his life. If I had asked and if he had told me, it might have saved a couple of lives. I might have. Terry Lennox is a drunk. Philip Marlowe, private detective, knows it's always a mistake to try to help drunks. But then, Marlowe is always on the side of losers. Perhaps that's why he decides to help Lennox get away when he's in trouble. But then the horribly injured body of Sylvia Lennox is found. Marlowe can't believe that Lennox killed his wife, but the police certainly do. And suddenly, wherever Marlowe goes, whatever he does, Terry Lennox's strange life seems to follow him around. It will stay that way until Marlowe can find some answers. But to find answers, you have to know what the questions are. Raymond Chandler was born in 1888 in Chicago, in the northern United States. As a child, he was taken to England, and in 1907 he became a British citizen. He fought in France in the First World War, then returned to the United States and took a managerial job with an oil company. He rose very high in the organization until he was sacked in 1932 for not taking his job seriously. It was only then that he decided to write for a living, turning to the type of stories he had always enjoyed reading, those of detection and crime. By 1938, he had written and sold 16 stories, and with his first novel, The Big Sleep, 1939, he turned the stout American detective novel into an art form. The hero of this and the books that followed it including forward My Lovely 1940, The High Window 1942, The Lady in the Lake 1944, The Little Sister 1949, and The Long Goodbye 1953. Was taught by intelligent private detective Philip Marlowe. In his last few years, Sheldon suffered from depression and ill health and began drinking heavily. He died in 1959. The Long Goodbye, Raymond Chandler. Chapter 1. The first time I saw Terry Lennox, he was sitting in a Rolls-Royce in front of fancy restaurants, and he was very drunk. He had a young man's face, but his hair was white as snow. He was drunk by looking at his eyes. Otherwise, he looked like my young man who had been spending too much money in a place that was there to take your money. There was a woman beside him. Her hair was a pretty dark red and she had a distant smile on her lips. I have a wonderful idea, darling, the woman said, trying to be nice. Why don't we take a taxi to your place and get your little car out? It's a wonderful night for a ride up the coast. The man said, awfully sorry, but I don't have I don't have it anymore. Had to see it. He spoke clearly. Sold it, darling? What do you mean? She slid away from him, but her voice slid even further. I had to eat. Oh, I see. A piece of ice wouldn't have melted on her now. Right then, the car door seemed to open itself, and the young man fell off the seat and landed sitting on the ground. So I went over and stuck my nose in their business. Or thought it's always a mistake to interfere with people who are drunk. I picked him up and put him on his feet. Thank you so much, he said politely. I thought I had an accent. He is so English when he drank. She said in a hard voice, thanks for catching him. I will get him in the back of the car, I said. Sorry, mister, but I'm late for an appointment. She started to drive off. He's just a lost dog, she added. Perhaps you can find a good home for him. And then she was gone, and the guy was asleep in my arms. I carried him to my car. He was heavy as I put him in the front seat. He woke up and thanked me again and went back to sleep. He was the politest drunk I'd ever met. While I drove, I looked at him once in a while. The right side of his face was one big square that the doctor has worked on. They hadn't failed, but they hadn't succeeded either. I was living that year in a house on Avenue in the Laurel Canyon area. The rent was low, partly because the owner didn't want a written agreement, and partly because of the steps. She was getting old, and they were too steep for her. I got him up, then somehow inside. I put him on the sofa and let him go back to sleep. He slept for an hour. When he woke up, he looked around and at me and wanted to know where he was. I told him. He said his name was Terry Lennox and that he lived in Westwood alone. His voice was steady. He said he called Henry in a cup of coffee, a cup of coffee. When I tried it, he asked me why he was here. I told him he had passed out outside a restaurant, and his girl had driven off and left him. He said he couldn't blame her. You're English? I asked. I lived there once. I was born there. We finished the coffee and I drove him home. He didn't say much on the way, except that he was sorry. He had probably said it so often that it was automatic. His apartment was small and empty. There was a little furniture, but no personal items at all. I didn't look like a place where anybody lived. He offered me a drink. I said no. When I left, he thanked me again, but not as if I had climbed a mountain for him, and not as if it was nothing at all. He was shy but very polite. Whatever he didn't have, he had a manner driving home. I thought about him. I'm supposed to be taught, but this one portrayed me. I didn't know why, unless it was the white hair and the scare and the clear voice. There was no reason I should see him again. Thought he was just a lost dog, like the woman said. It was a month later when I did see him again, about 3 blocks from my office. There was a police car stopped in the middle of the street, and the men inside were staring and something on the car. That something was still in the legs, or what was left of him. His shirt, his shorts was dirty and open at the neck. He hadn't shaved off for 4 or 5 days. His skin, his skin was so pale that the square head hardly showed. It was obvious why the policemen were looking at him, so I went over there fast and took hold of his arms. Stand up and walk, I said. Can you do that? Can you do it? He looked at me and nodded slowly. I wasn't even sure he recognized me. I'm just a little empty, he said. He made the effort and let me walk him to the street. There was a taxi here. I opened the back door and got him inside. The police car pulled up. A cab with grey hair asked me, "What have we got here?" "He is not drunk," I said. "He is a friend." "That's nice," the cab says carelessly. He was still looking at Terry. "What's your friend name, Paul?" "Philip Marlowe," Terry said slowly. "He lives in Utah, lives in Laurel Canyon." The cab starts at a spot. He was making a decision. It took him a little while. "Okay, get him off the street at least." The police car drove away. "We went to a place where you could get hamburgers that you could actually eat. I fed Lennox a couple and a bottle of beer and took him to my place. An hour later, he was shaved and cleaned, and he looked human again. I made 2 very drink, and we talked as we drank. "Lucky you remember my name," I said. "No, lucky you remember my name," I said. "Not only that," he said, "I looked up your phone number too. So why didn't you call? I live here at I live I live here all the time. Why should I bribe you? I bother you. Looks like you you ought to have bothered someone. Asking for help, it isn't easy," he said, "especially when it's all your own fault." He looked up with a tired smile. He looked up with a tired smile. "Maybe I can stop drinking one of these days. They all say that, don't they? It's take about 3 years. 3 years?" He looked shocked. He turned and looked at the clock and changed the subject. "I have a sweet case worth $200 down at the Hollywood bus station. I could get money for it. Maybe not $200, but enough for a bus ticket to Las Vegas and I could get a job there. I didn't say anything. I mean, I didn't say anything. A man I knew well in the army runs a big club there. His name's Andy Starr. Something must have shone in my face. Yes, he continued. He's part gangster, but they all are. They all are. And the other part of him isn't bad. I can give you the bus fare and some extra, I said. He shook, he shook his head. I want you out of my hair, explained. I have got a feeling about you. You have? He looked down into his glass. We have only met twice. What sort of feeling? A feeling that next time we meet, I will find you in worse trouble than I can get you out of. I don't know why I have this feeling, but I do. He touched his square gently. Maybe this makes me look like trouble, I suppose, but I got it honestly. It's not that, I said. It's this. I'm a private detective, and you are a problem that I don't have to solve. But the problem's there. Maybe that girl didn't drive away that time just because you were drunk. Maybe she had a feeling too. I smiled faintly. I was married to her once. Her name is still Lennox. I married her for her money. When he saw my face, he smiled bright, disappointed. You are wondering why I didn't ask her for help. Did you ever hear of pride? You're killing me, Lennox. My pride is different. It's the pride of a man who has nothing else. Sorry if it's bothers you. It bothers me and it bothers me too. Although I couldn't understand exactly why any more than I know why a man would starve and walk the streets before he'd sell a suitcase. Whatever his roles were, thought he played by them. I went down to the bus station and got a suitcase for him. When I came back, he said he had called his pal in Las Vegas. He was sore at me because I hadn't called him before. He was. It takes a strength to help you, I said, and put $100 in front of him and take the suitcase with you. You might need to sell it later. I don't want it, he said. If you like, you can keep it for me. He changed his clothes and we went out for dinner. No drinks. Afterwards, he called the bus and I drove him, thinking about this and that. At 9:30, the telephone rang, and the voice that spoke was one I had heard once before. Is this Mr. Philip Marlowe? It is. It is Sylvia Lennox, Mr. Marlowe. We met for a moment one night last month. I heard afterward that you had been kind enough to take Jerry home. I did that. I've been a little worried about him. Nobody seems to know where he is. I noticed how worried you were in the other night, I said. He's on a bus to Las Vegas. Las Vegas? This news seemed to cheer her up. How sweet of him, that's where we were married. I guess he forgot that, I said, or he won't have gone. somewhere else. Instead of hanging up, he asked, "It was a pretty lot. Are you always as red as these two ladies?" "I don't know that you are a lady." The man was living in the streets. He had no money, no one at all. You could have found him if you had really wanted to. He didn't want anything from you then, and he probably doesn't want anything from you now. That, she said calmly, it's something you know nothing about. Mr. Marlowe, good night. She was completely right, of course, and I was all wrong. But I didn't make wrong then, I just felt angry. Chapter 2. 3 days before Christmas, I got a check on a Las Vegas bank for my $100. And not come with it. He thanked me, wished me a Merry Christmas, and said he hoped to see me soon. The surprise came at the end. Sylvia and I were married again. She says not to be angry with her for wanting to try again. I read the rest of the story on the 60th page of the newspaper. All are happy with the news that Sylvia and Terry Lennox have remarried at Las Vegas. The darling Sylvia is, of course, the youngest daughter of millionaire Arlen Potter. And what does that daddy think of the marriage? One can only guess. Potter is one person who never ever gives interviews. Well, I thought if he wants for money, her money, let him take it. I just didn't want to see him again, but I knew I would, if only because of the sweet guys. It was 5 o'clock on a wood March evening when he walked into my little office. He looked changed, older, more serious, but calmer too, like a man who had learned a hard lesson. "Let's go to some quiet bar," he said, as if he had seen me 10 minutes before. We didn't shake the hand. We almost never did. Englishmen don't shake hands all the time like Americans do. And Ultite, who wasn't English, he had their manners. "We went to Victor's on the way." I said something stupid about his new life, and he said that if he wasn't happy, at least he was rich, and he said that he wasn't having any trouble at all handing and drinking these days. "Perhaps you were never really drunk," I said. "At the bar we drank gain and lane. An Englishman's drink. Lennox said they didn't know the right way to make them hear. I wasn't interested in talking about the drinks, so I asked him about his pal in Las Vegas. "Down my street," I said. "Star Wars knows a thought customer. Randy? In Las Vegas? He is turned straight businessman. You shall drop and see him next time you were there. I will be your pal." "Not too likely. I don't like gangster. That's just a word, Marlowe. We have that kind of word. The walls give it to us, and we're going to keep it. Randy and I and another guy were all in a little dungeon. Once together, it's different for the three of us. So, why didn't you ask him for help when you needed it?" He finished his drink drink and signaled for another because he couldn't refuse. I didn't want to pick from him. You pick it from a stranger. He looked me straight in the eye. Strangers can keep going and pretend not to hear. When he finished the second drink, he drove me back to the office. From then on, it became his hobby to drop in around 5 o'clock. We usually went to Victor's. I didn't understand why he enjoyed being with me and instead of being in his big, expensive house. I asked him about that once. Nothing for me at the house, he said. Drinking is his usual gain and lean. Am I supposed to understand that? A big film with no story, as they say in the film business. Sylvia is happy enough, but not with me. In our circle, that's not too unpleasant. You see, the rich don't really have a good time. They never want anything very much except maybe someone else's wife. And that's a bad desert compared with the way of butcher's wife when you certain for the living room. Mostly I just Kill, kill time. A little tennis, a little swimming. I told him it didn't have to be the way it was. He told him it didn't have to be the way it was. He said I should wonder why she wanted him, not why he wanted to be there. You're like having servant and the bells to ring, I said. It just smelled. Could be. I grew up on an orphan with no money. I began thinking I liked him better drunk, hungry and beaten and broke. That night he would have told me the story of his life if I'd asked him, if I had asked him, and if he had told me. It might have saved a couple of lives. It might have. The last time we have drank together was in May. It was earlier than usual and the bar was nearly empty. I like bars at this hour. He said, I like to watch the man fix the first one of the evening. I like to taste it slowly. Alcohol is like love. The first kiss is magic. Then he started talking about her. I feel sorry for Sylvia. She is so terrible. But I think I like her. One day she will need someone, and no one else will be there, and I will probably make a mess of it. What this about? I asked. She's scared. I don't know of what. Maybe her father. He's a good man. He doesn't even like her. If she knows him too much, something might happen to her. You are her husband, I pointed out. Officially, nothing more. I can't listen to this. I stood up and dropped some money on the table. You talk too much, and it's always about you. See you later. I walked out. 10 minutes later, I was sorry, but 10 minutes later, I was somewhere else. I didn't see him again for a month. When I did, it was early in the morning. The doorbell woke me up. He was standing there, looking like hell, and he had a gun in his hand. You are driving me to Tijuana to get a plane? at 10:15. I have a passport out. I don't have transportation. I will pay you $500 for the ride. I stood in the door and didn't move to let him in. How about $500 plus the gun? I asked. He looked at it and then dropped it in his pocket. Come on, come on, I said, and he came in and fell into a chair. I'm in trouble, he said. It's going to be a beautiful day. Cold, too. Yeah, I guess you were in trouble. Let's talk about it after coffee. I always need my morning coffee. He followed me into the kitchen. I poured him a big drink from a bottle off the shelf. He had to use two hands to get it to his mouth. Didn't sleep at all last night. Last night, he said weakly. I poured him another drink, and he drank this one with one hand. When he finished it, the coffee was ready. I sat down across from him. Without warning, his head came down on the table, and he was crying. He didn't seem notice when I took the gun from his pocket. I smelled it. It hadn't been fired. He lifted his head and said, I didn't shoot anybody. I held up my hand. Wait a minute. It like this. Be very careful. What you tell me if you want me to help you. I can't be told about a crime you've committed, or a crime you know has been committed. What if you want me to drive you in Tijuana? He looked straight at me for the first time since he had come in. I said I was in trouble. I hate you. I don't want to know what kind of trouble. It's a matter of law. I can't know. I called me to drive me with the gun, he said. He grunted and pushed the gun across the table. He didn't touch it. I am a man who sometimes has business with guns. I looked stupid trying to tell the police I was so scared. Scared, I had to do what you told me to. Listen, he said. They won't even look in the bedroom until midday. She won't be there. The bed will be too neat. So they will look in the guest house. Servants always know what goes on. And when they see her, I said, they think she drank, right. And that's the end of the story. That's all I want to hear. You are sick of it all. You have been thinking of leaving for some time. I called her father last night, Henrik said, remembering I told him I was leaving. What did he say? He was sorry. He wished me luck. Oh, yes. He also asked me if I needed money. That's all he ever thinks about. Did you ever see her with a man in the guest house? I asked Cindy. He looked surprised. I never even tried. Okay, so this is how it is. You come to me this morning and want a ride to Tijuana. You couldn't bear life with her anymore. Where you want was no one of my business. We are friends, and I did what you asked me. How does it sound? He looked at me hopefully. Depends